Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 9 of the anime series, ClassicaLoid. And I loved this episode because it's very much putting the focus on what is probably my all-time favorite of the classical composers, Beethoven. You know, whenever you have an entertainment property that is dealing with characters and people who really lived in our world's history, you know, it can be fanatical, it can be fantastical, it can be absolutely absurd, but when the other leg drops and you actually get some insights into the real life of that particular person, that persona, that character, I freaking love it. And I love, as they touch upon in this episode, he had gone deaf in seeking a life of being a performance artist, you know, performing the pieces he composed. This was a life that was very short-lived because he would eventually go deaf and have to fall back on his artistic integrity and you know, all of that prowess that he had to compose these pieces, which he could hear in his own mind. You know, he conducted so many of these miraculous, meticulous, some of the most beautifully crafted pieces of music in our world's history, in the history of the medium, being stone deaf, being unable to hear even a single note outside of what he projected inside of his mind. And to basically touch upon that and to see that the reason Beats-sama in this episode has been holed up for so many weeks as he has, he's been working away, whiling away the hours trying to create a guitar because, somewhat comically, as we find out, he just happened to be walking down the sidewalk one day. He looks up at this Jumbotron screen where he sees live performers rocking out on their guitars. He has that explosive sound, you know, all of that reverb and those decibels screaming out of so many amplifiers as they're plucking their guitar strings, and it's washing over him and creating a level of euphoria as well as a coinciding level of anxiety, the anxiety calling back on his original persona, the Beethoven he is based on. You know, being a ClassicaLoid, I guess you could say arguably we haven't had the full nitty-gritty given to us, exposed to us, but a clone, whatever you want to call it, you know, he's based on the genuine articles, so there are so many aspects of his mind that hunker back to that. And we've seen that with some of the other ClassicaLoids as well, you know, Mozart, Schubert, stuff like that, Chopin, where they're aware of their former selves. They're aware of so many aspects of their mentalities, their memories, their minds, and everything like that. And he has such a strength in this anxiety that he doesn't quite know how to put his thumb on. He doesn't quite know what is creating this flame in his soul that is threatening to be snuffed out by such an anxiety. And it all has to do with those memories of that hearing loss, the loss of the foundations of his future, what he wanted to do, what he so desperately sought to achieve in his life, in the original Beethoven's life. To be a performer, he lost his way. His future was cast, as we hear Beats-sama say in this episode, into darkness. And so when he hears this soul-inflaming music by guitar, it's like it is so miraculous and euphoric, yet he doesn't know if he can grip onto it, if he can grasp it himself. And so he's creating guitar after guitar after guitar, not really certain how exactly to claim what he hears in his mind in the similar fashion to how he could compose those meticulous pieces of music so successfully that he would never hear. You know, it's so ironic that, and so it's such a wonder, something to aspire toward, kind of like the Marvel Comics character Daredevil, who in his blindness was able to achieve great feats of super-powered, you know, abilities. And that is not something so far-fetched. When people lose one of their senses, their other senses become heightened, and they can still live a productive life as long as they have the strength and endurance to do so, and they have the support of others around them. And Beats-sama is trying to find his own internal support. He's trying not to wallow away and let his entire being, his entire essence be snuffed out by this self-reproach, by this doubt, by this anxiety created by the deafness of his former self. And I almost have to argue, because he walks past and keeps encountering this hippy-dippy sort of street performer guitarist lady who Her voice is absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. The melody of whatever the song is that she's singing just captivates my heart. And I feel like, even though Beethoven himself says her voice is not really anything special, her lyrics not very meaningful, I feel like it's a 180-degree turn from that. I think he's feeling very much the opposite, that this is what, in actuality, rather than what he saw up on that Jumbotron screen, I think this is the music that actually really embodied that flame in his soul, really got it percolating again. And I think that's answered by the episode's end with the gift he gives her. Of course, because Sosuke, in his grand wisdom, in trying to help Beethoven achieve this accomplishment of creating the pitch-perfect guitar, he lends Beethoven his own guitar, which he then modifies into a flame-throwing abomination, like something out of, Mad Max Fury Road or something. And Sosuke's completely mind-busted about this, and he happens upon a poster, unbeknownst to him, held by the agency. There's going to be this sort of, it's not quite a battle of the bands, but it's a performance thing where if you play and you win, you will effectively get this really expensive, all kinds of crazy awesome guitar. And Sosuke has his sights set on it for himself, of course. He wants to help Beethoven as an extension for his plan to try to summon music for himself. Like he has any hope of really even doing that. He's not a ClassicaLoid. I don't think human beings are probably endowed with this power, this supernatural ability, whatever it is, whatever it amounts to, we have yet to find out. But I don't think Sosuke is actually thinking realistically that he's going to be able to achieve this on his own and become Elvis incarnate, as much as he hopes and wants to. But I think it's fascinating that, of course, Bach-sama and Barzuska and Tchaikovsky, they are all there when Beethoven goes out on stage, and he had the help of all of the rest of the ClassicaLoids to create a hybridization guitar using all of their stylistic traits and everything, colors and everything like that. The green, for Liz, there's pink and sparkles for Mozart and everything like that. And he goes out on stage, and immediately Bach-sama cuts the entire place into darkness. And it's so captivating that because here is where Beethoven finally reaches beyond that aspect of those anxieties of old. He's been cast into darkness much as he felt his future was when he first went deaf and he had to give up being a performer. And yet he soldiered on. He aspired toward greatness. And here, Beat-sama, he does that. He creates the music, he calls it forth, and he completely brain busts the entire freaking auditorium, creating these like 19th century ball gowns on everybody and suits and dress clothes and everything. It's amazing. And then, of course, he wins and gives this prized guitar to that hippy-dippy street performer guitarist girl. It was such a beautiful twist. It really sang to my heart, no pun intended. I love this series. I loved the heart and the characterization in this particular episode. Sosuke being completely downtrodden because he's stuck with the hybridization guitar, this chunk of junk that was, modified and hybridized out of his former guitar. And then he sees this prized guitar go to this stranger on the street because of her captivating voice, her captivating sounds were so melodious that it really inspired Beethoven to seek another level higher in his musical foundations. And I love that you have Schubert coming back after traveling to Cuba to find all the best, parts to make a brand new guitar, the pitch-perfect guitar, and everything's said and done at that point, and Beethoven's just like, oh, it's done. So Schubert, see me, senpai, notice me, senpai, has to cry his ever-loving eyes out because he got nowhere yet again. And so yeah, beautiful, beautiful episode. I absolutely loved it. I loved calling back on the real life of this master composer, my all-time favorite of the classical composers, as I say, Beethoven himself, a man who went deaf and yet went on to create some of the most beautiful, meticulous pieces of music in our history, in our rich history. It's unfathomable, but it's also admirable and something to aspire toward, as I say. No matter what hurdles stand before you, you can still achieve greatness if you really have the desire and the forthrightness to do so. And, you know, kind of calling back on Back to the Future, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything, and Beethoven is living proof of that, I feel. And so, yeah, Beethoven senpai indeed, as Schubert would have it, and I totally agree. And I can't wait to see where we go from here. So, yeah, otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace.